Bienvenido al podcast de Daway. Si quieres aprender inglés y hablar como un nativo, estás en el sitio correcto. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a cambiar vidas aprendiendo inglés. Visita nuestra página web daway.es para conocer más sobre nuestros cursos, los cuales incluyen un examen oficial de Language Share tras su finalización. Todos los títulos de Language Share están aceptados a nivel mundial y los puedes realizar desde la comodidad de tu casa. Bienvenido al...
Hey.
Hello.
Firstly, welcome everybody to a new style of podcast. We have Jack Lewis here with us today, a teacher from Murcia, and also he's in charge of all the blog articles that you will see on daway.es. It's good to finally put a face in front of the blog so everyone knows who you are. So Jack, let's start off by just learning a little bit about yourself. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. What do they need to know?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show, Anthony. My name's Jack. I'm from the north of England. I'm from a place called Bradford in Yorkshire. I studied languages at university in Manchester Metropolitan University.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2018, I moved out to Spain to do an Erasmus year here. And I came back to teach, and I've been here 5 years. And 5 years later, I'm still here, still teaching, blogging now, and yeah.
And it's not just obviously blogging for Daway either. You have your personal blog. Tell us a little bit about your personal blog.
So it started as a bit of a hobby when I was studying here, and I just decided to expand, tell people about my experiences, and talk a bit about Murcia, where I'm living now, because it's a part of Spain which isn't visited as much as other places like Barcelona by tourists. And I thought, oh well, let's try and create some content related to Murcia to try and bring more tourists to this area and so that they can have an amazing experience like me and yourself.
Yeah, and I love it when you upload blogs, because there's obviously you go and try things that us expats haven't seen. So give us a little plug. What is your domain name, your website?
My domain name. So it's on WordPress. It's the Goofy Guiri, it's called. And also you can follow me on Instagram for updates on my blog schedule and where to find like the newest entries. It's at the Goofy Guiri. So at the Goofy Guiri on Instagram for social media updates.
And the Spanish listeners that we have, they will understand what a guiri is. But if we have anyone that isn't Spanish that's listening, what is a guiri? A goofy guiri.
A goofy guiri, yeah. Well, the goofy part was just a bit of alliteration for me, just to like G and G. It sounded cool at the time. But guiri is it's a term which is used to refer to someone from England or north of Europe, the typical sort of English tourist who I guess walks down the street with socks and sandals and that sort of thing. I got called it a fair bit when I first moved out here.
I'm the same. I got called it a couple of times while I first moved here. And then you speak to them in Spanish, and they're like, "Oh, he's not a typical guiri." Yeah. So just a bit of interesting vocabulary there. I asked Jack to obviously give us a plug, and a plug is when you promote yourself. So obviously asking Jack to promote his website, his Instagram handle, etc. And all of this information we'll put down below in the show notes, so you can follow Jack on his giddy adventures and see what he's up to. And obviously if you come and visit Murcia at any time, you can get some ideas of things to do and stuff like that. So you said you're from Bradford originally. I think it would be interesting for the audience to kind of know a little bit about Bradford. It's not as well known as obviously London, Manchester, Liverpool.
That's true. Yeah, I think Murcia and Bradford have that in common in that sense. But I think that's really where the similarities end. I'd say that the weather's very different. It's quite a lot colder and wetter than in Murcia. But it's an amazing place. It doesn't get a lot of media attention, and when it does, it's not always great. But like usually, it's quite it's a great place. Like there's a lot of amazing places, a lot of green spaces where you can go hiking. A lot of like beautiful small villages, like Haworth, for example. Haworth, the Yorkshire Dales is just up the road.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing place for like outdoors, for camping, for meeting friends, going to country pubs. It's a wonderful place. So I'd recommend it if you can go check out. And if you're interested in like the Industrial Revolution, that's one of the cities where the Industrial Revolution started. So you can see a lot of examples of that area there,
which is really cool. So if people were to go to Bradford, what's the closest airport?
Closest airport, you've got Leeds Bradford Airport. You can get that from Alicante. You can get flights from there. For more regular flights, I'd probably say the closest would be Manchester, and you can just hop on a train from Manchester to Leeds Bradford to Bradford or Leeds in about an hour. So I would recommend that.
Ideal. I mean, it's crazy. I spent most of my life in the UK and never visited Bradford nor Manchester, of all places. A famous city like Manchester, and I've never been there. So anyway, this next part of the podcast, we're going to call it Real Life, Real English, where basically Jack and I are going to talk about a topic and highlight some of the vocabulary and grammar as we're talking in a really natural manner. So you can hear a conversation between two people, and we'll highlight some grammar and vocabulary as we go. So the topic that Jack has chosen to speak about is cycling. Jack's a keen cyclist. He loves to ride his bike. We've had a couple of bike rides together. I think it was like 4 years ago now. We actually did a really long bike ride to Caravecca de la Cruz.
Yes.
We were wearing our masks at the beginning, so it was around COVID time. But yeah, Jack, tell us how you got into cycling, what type of cycling?
Mainly it's mountain biking mainly. I would like to get into other types, so perhaps gravel bikes, road bikes in the future. But for the time being, it's just mountain biking. And I first got into it when I moved out here. Actually, I met some people, some fellow teachers at the training sessions for working in the academy that I work at now. And they recommended, just get out on your bike, because this was during the height of COVID. So the only way you could really go out was by doing exercise. So it was a perfect opportunity to get out of the flat. And now it's just become like a regular hobby. I don't do it as much as I would like to, just because I've got other commitments now. But I think moving forwards in the future, I'll find time to increase my output on the road in the mountains. So I'm looking forward to it. I've got some plans in mind of some really big rides coming up. I need to get in shape first for that.
Hey, there was some really good vocabulary there, actually. So obviously there's lots of different types of cycling. First we got gravel biking, which Jack mentioned, which is it's kind of off-road, but it's on very maintained paths normally. What's the difference between a mountain bike and a gravel bike?
I think it's almost like gravel bike is like the in-between road biking and mountain biking, whereas mountain bikes you're kind of like, it's more technical, more up and down, whereas a gravel bike is, as you say, it's like not so much tarmac but maintained trails. That's sort of like, I wouldn't take, for example, I'd never take if I had a gravel bike, I would never take that up into the mountains, because it would just rip through the tires. So
yeah. Yeah, so some more vocabulary there is obviously the tires, the wheels on the bike. We call them tires. And Jack said you could rip through the tires, and if you rip through a tire, you get a puncture, and then you have to repair the puncture by repairing the inner tube, which is the tube inside of the tire that goes around the wheel. And I think another big difference between gravel bikes and mountain bikes, for example, is the mountain bikes normally have suspension, whether it's full suspension or just front suspension, which is suspension on the front forks, which are below the handlebars. And then obviously a road bike and road cycling, that's a different beast on its own, where the handlebars are really low, the bikes are really light, the tires and the wheels are extremely thin, and you go a lot faster on those bikes. And you wouldn't take a road bike on gravel, for example, and nor a gravel bike on the mountain trails. So yeah, let's go back to the ride that you and I did all those years ago, which was to Caravaca de la Cruz. It's a famous route here in Spain. Do you want to tell the audience about the route? I think you know a bit more about kind of the significance of it, where it starts, where it finishes.
Yeah, so last year, in fact, I think it was the Jubilee year of the route, because it has like a religious significance too, because it's a place of pilgrimage that a lot of people who in the area and also across Spain know quite well. It doesn't get as much media attention, I guess, as like the Camino de Santiago in the north of Spain, but it's still quite big. So the traditional route, the most popular route, starts from Murcia or Orihuela, which is a little bit further away in Alicante. And it goes from Murcia to Molina de Segura, all the main cities. So Molina, Campos del Rio, Mula, Buyas, finished in Caravaca. It's about, I think it's about 90, I think it was about 95 when we did it. It was about 95 kilometers.
Yep.
And it was, it was.
So we started in the cathedral, didn't we? Right outside the cathedral of Murcia. Very iconic spot for tourism here in Murcia. And then we joined what's called the Via Verde, which is the trail by the river, and it's all signposted for Caravaca. This route to Caravaca. We didn't get lost at all, really. We stopped on the way and had breakfast in the cafes along the way, took in the sights, got loads of videos and things. It was a fantastic day out. And like Jack said, it was 90 something kilometers there. So obviously when you get to Caravaca, it's 90 kilometers away from your home. So you either have to ride back the same day if you're strong. You could grab a hotel in Caravaca, or do like we did, which is we asked my wife Marina to come and pick us up. So we put the bikes in the back of the car, and she picked us up and drove us home. And that was a really cool day out. And highly recommend it to anyone that likes cycling, no matter what level of cyclist you are. Obviously 90 something kilometers is a long distance to ride for anybody. But if you have a little bit of fitness and you're quite used to riding your bike, it's not a difficult trail at all. It's all maintained really well. It's all signposted. There's lots of places where you can stop and pick up refreshments along the way. So yeah, that's a really good one actually to talk about for people that want to come to Murcia and do something different. Let's move on with cycling. Tell us a little bit about these projects that you have, these other routes you want to do.
Yeah, so well, I've recently moved house, or in the process of moving house, to an area outside of the city called Sangonera la Verde, which is it's just a quiet little village, and it's on the foot of the mountain of a mountain called Carrascoy, or the range is called Sierra de Carrascoy, and I've always said to myself, I really want to go I want to explore these mountains. Living in Murcia, I've explored like El Valle, Los Relojeros, Cresta del Gallo on my bike, but I've never done that side of the mountains. So that's my next plan. Find some interesting routes, get out there, maybe even get into some hiking or trail running like yourself, Anthony. Who knows? But yes, and then potentially as well, Sierra Espuña, it's a little bit closer in Sangonera. So, maybe chucking my bike in the car and heading down there and spending a weekend exploring the routes there.
You used some fantastic vocabulary there. I need to try and remember it all. So one thing Jack does really well, and I think this comes because you like to write. Instead of just writing things as they are, you add lots of colorful vocabulary to it. And I call colorful vocabulary your adjectives and your graders and things like that. So when Jack was describing where he lived, he just put an adjective in front of the village, which was a quiet village. And then when he described the position and the place of where he lives, it's at the foot of a mountain range. We use the word foot to describe that it's like at the bottom of the mountain range. And then you use lots of graders like really and very and things like that, just to make it more colorful, I say, but it's a lot more exciting and keeps the reader, or in a podcast like this, it keeps the listener engaged. So a really good tip for anyone listening is just to add this colorful information, this colorful vocabulary into your speaking and especially into your writing. Wouldn't you agree on that, Jack? Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, absolutely. For creative writing and things like that, try to use adjectives. It's just a really good habit to have, especially to prepare for speaking and as I said, for writing, things like that. It's really good, and it also just helps to expand your vocabulary and put it into practice. So absolutely.
Yeah. And another thing that Jack did near the end of describing his plans for the future, he said, "I will chuck my bike into the car." And again, instead of using "I will put my bike in the car," put's a very boring word. It doesn't really describe the manner of which you put the bike into the car. So to chuck something is to throw. So by Jack saying, "I will chuck my bike in the back of the car," it kind of gives action and movement to the verb. So that's another way of increasing your grade in vocabulary, and it makes it so much more engaging. And you said a few other things, but you said too many for me to remember them all. I need to start taking notes as you're speaking. We'll very quickly we'll move on to the next section, which is going to be called In the Spotlight. And we started off by obviously talking about your blog, both daway and the Goofy Giddy, and your handles and everything. But is there anything specific that you would like to promote or shout out?
Well, on the subject, bringing together what we talked about, the blog and also cycling with Caravaca, I've written a couple of blogs about the trail, about the Camino de Caravaca. One which was quite like narrative, like talking about the route that we both did. And then also there was a blog which was more do's and don'ts, so things that you should do and shouldn't do while you're on the route. So in order to have the best experience and make the most of the adventure. So I definitely check out those. Follow me on the socials as well for more blogs this year. I'm building a schedule right now for the new year until summer. And so soon I'll have some posts out on social media, just advertising those, and then the posts themselves on the blog will be out soon after that, hopefully.
And remind me of your Instagram handle again.
Oh yes, the Instagram handle at the Goofy Guiri, and then just
Goofy Giddy. And how do you spell Giddy? Guirr or one R?
Guirri. Guiri, I believe. Yes. Yes. And
what
also,
I'm going to do is
oh, yes.
I will add it to the screen now. Is that correct for your Instagram handle?
That is correct. That is the one. Yes. Also, if you Google as well, the Goofy Guiri Murcia, I'm sure it will pop up on the screen. You'll get my WordPress. You'll get my my Instagram. So yes, do check me out.
Ideal. And before we leave and do the final segment, let's just talk a little bit about teaching and your teaching style, because obviously you're a teacher here in Murcia. Just tell everyone a little bit about what you do, where you work, and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I work here in Murcia. I work in the academy called Hello El Renero. I've been here for nearly 5 years now, and I've been teaching all ages from infants all the way to adults, from complete beginners all the way up to C1, so like almost native speakers. And yeah, it's been a really rewarding experience. Initially, I came to Spain looking to teach because I knew that there was a market there for English teachers. But I didn't think, initially it wasn't meant as my like dream job, but now I think I've found my groove, my teaching my teaching voice, my teaching everything, and I'm feeling a lot more like in the zone, a lot more like I'm happy with my job. I'm enjoying, all of my students are great, and so yeah, I can't wait. For example, this afternoon, I've got some activities planned with them, so it'll be good to see how they react to those activities.
Yeah, and Jack has a really great relationship with his students, and like he said, it's 5 years, 4 years. 5 years
Yeah.
you've been here at Hello El Granero. And year after year, we get the same students that come back and sign up, and they all ask for the same teacher. They all ask, "Am I with Jack next year?" And so it's that's credit to your teaching style and your planning for classes and things like that. So very quickly, let's talk about some of these activities that you do in class with your students to help them obviously get the most out of learning English.
Yeah, well, learning the theory is one thing. So, for example, learning the grammar, learning, for example, the irregular verbs, which is often quite a tedious, quite a boring activity for some students. But I like to turn it into a game, like make fun games. So, for example, I like to break the class up into teams, and I use things like buzzers like this. So I'll shout out the infinitive, the base form of a verb. Like, for example, let's say begin, and then they have to press the buzzer, and then they'll say begun, or I'll ask them to make a sentence with that verb. So it's not just writing things down, not just using the book, but it's more like doing creative things like that. I also like to use now that we have projectors in the class, I like to do more like interactive games that bring the students not just together, but also using like technology and stuff like that. So they're getting an experience of the real world. So like mixing the grammar into fun activities, so that it's more enjoyable, and they're going home with that with that knowledge, and also like the feeling that they've had a good time in the class.
It's super important that these kids, they've learned something in English, and not just through the typical theory work through a book. It's something that obviously we pride ourselves in at the way we do it completely differently, and then in person here in the academy. We try and make it as interactive as possible and engaging as possible. So yeah. All right, well, we'll bring the podcast to a close. Now, at the end of each podcast, at the end of each episode, I'm going to ask each of our guests to recommend someone else to come on to the show, talk about their hobbies, talk about their experience with teaching English, etc. So obviously I asked you to prepare someone who you would recommend that we invite onto the show. So who would you invite?
Yeah, I'd like to invite my colleague Aurelia. She has a really dynamic and interesting way of teaching her students, and I think she'd be a great guest to have on your show.
Yeah, I think I'll be sending her a message to get her on here ASAP. Fantastic. Is there anything else that you would like to recommend to the audience? Any resources or anything like that?
Well, I definitely recommend using Daway. Okay, checking out the Daway blogs, the podcasts as well, and checking the Daway courses for to see if one of the level courses that is available is best for you. I'd also recommend, for example, if you want to learn English like in a more of a passive way, like check out books, look for TV series that you can watch in English, which are a bit like it's a bit more of a passive way to study and get a learning experience from that. So
yeah, I mean, we always tell parents come in and they say, what more can my child do, or what more can I do to start learning English? And it's just do something. So we always say that, there is a passive and an active way of learning, and both of them are super important. So yes, sitting down, watching an episode on Netflix in English is fantastic. And it is a little bit more passive because you can see body language, you can hear the intonation, so you kind of understand the story without understanding the story. And then there's this active way of teaching, which is, okay, I'm going to watch this episode in English on Netflix. However, I'm going to have a notepad next to me, and I'm going to write down any new vocabulary because I've got the subtitles in English as well. I don't know that word. Let's write it down and look it up later. I don't know that word. So setting yourself a challenge or a task to do while you're watching a Netflix episode then takes it into an active way of learning. And just some ideas of things you can do through watching a Netflix episode is, like I said, new vocabulary, write it down. Have an idea in your head, right? Past simple. Every time I hear a verb in the past simple, I need to make a stroke or write it down. And how many verbs in the past simple can I hear within a 2-minute period? How many adjectives can I hear? And things like that. So there's loads of ways of making this very passive way of learning into an active way, so that the information sticks more in here. The beauty of passively learning by listening to podcasts or watching series, films, etc. in English is that you're just training your ear to hear sounds that you're not used to hearing from birth. How do young babies learn to speak? It's just repetition of the same sounds again and again and again. So by passively listening, you're starting to train your ear into that. So let's bring the podcast to an end there. Thank you, Jack, for coming on. I hope you've all enjoyed this different style of podcast that we're going to be doing from now on. The same podcast, Aurelia's podcasts are going to stay the same. Her podcasts are going to come out every Thursday. Jack's blogs come out every Sunday. And there's free quizzes that you can do at the end of some of his blogs as well. And obviously on daway.es, you can do a level test to check your English level, and then it will recommend the best course for you if you're interested in doing a course. So Jack, thank you very much, and we will catch you all in the next one.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Si disfrutó de este episodio y quieres llevar tus conocimientos de inglés al siguiente nivel, te invitamos a todos nuestros cursos online, desde A2 hasta C1, que incluyen un examen oficial de Language Share que puedes realizar desde la comodidad de tu casa y que es aceptado a nivel mundial. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a cambiar su vida. Visita ahora daway.es y realiza nuestro test de nivel interactivo de manera gratuita. Si disfrutó de este episodio,